Well, hello, friends. Ryan here, professional life coach, Enneagram educator, and your host for this episode of Fourward Bound with the Enneagram. You know, the Enneagram is a powerful tool for building understanding, compassion, and achieving growth in our lives, grounded by 9 types or ways that our personalities and egos are structured. The conversations in this podcast are designed to illuminate the Enneagram in action by hearing directly from individuals who are working with the Enneagram and their type in their lives. The views reflected in these conversations are personal, and so what one person shares may not be true for all others who identify as their particular Enneagram type, and that's okay. My encouragement: listen with compassionate curiosity. Thanks for being with us. So today we are moving close to the world of Enneagram Type 4. This is one that is near and dear to my heart, as I actually lead with Type 4. And so our guest today is my friend Ashley, who leads with Type 4. So welcome in, Ashley.
Hey, Ryan. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. How are you feeling about being on the podcast?
Well, to lean on my 4, I'm very grateful to be able to share a little bit about leading with 4.
I love it. I am full of gratitude for your willingness to be here and to share with folks who are listening in. Maybe they're considering if they may be a Type 4, or they're thinking about someone in their life who they think leads with Type 4. And so I know we're going to have a great conversation. If it would be okay with you, what I'd like to do is start with just a little bit of an overview about the type for folks who are listening along, and then we'll really quickly get into a conversation about your experience. Does that work for you?
That sounds fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Let's take a look together at Enneagram Type 4, often referred to as the romantic. We start by looking at the instinctual center of intelligence for the type. This could be head, heart, or body. As a heart center type, along with Type 2 and 3, Type 4 leads from the emotional center, relying on feelings and emotions as the primary way of experiencing and processing the world. These tend to be sensitive and introspective individuals who are attuned to beauty and meaning, with a tendency to prioritize personal expression and authenticity over practical considerations. The romantic embodies a view that the world is an abandoning place. There is this sense that something is missing, lacking connection. A belief system develops for Type 4 that to know and experience love, the ideal relationship or situation must be obtained. The type structure sets out to achieve this with a focus on the idealistic and through the experience of deep feeling, empathy, and authenticity. 2 primary driving attentions emerge for Type 4. We'll refer to those as envy and melancholy. First, let's look at this notion of envy. This is not necessarily focused on material matters, but a longing for a sense of completeness or wholeness that the type believes others possess. Individuals who lead with Type 4 may feel envious of others' achievements, relationships, or experiences that they perceive are unattainable for themselves. A focus on idealized relationships and situations, often fictional or imagined, continue the longing and envy for what is desired but not attainable. And now let's look at the experience of melancholy, a sense of sadness or grief that comes from feeling incomplete or disconnected from their true selves and others. Individuals who lead with Type 4 may be prone to dwelling on past losses or missed opportunities, and may struggle to find meaning or purpose in their lives. Melancholy or sadness may even manifest in response to experiences of beauty, a deeply felt response that reinforces the specialness of the experience. Melancholy, sadness, or otherwise, the type structure generally leads with a broad range of big emotions. Believing that feelings are what is real, and preferring intensity over what the type sees as flatness or dullness in the middle. Often at home amidst creativity, individuals who lead with Type 4 may find self-expression through music, dance, writing, or other creative work helpful for emotional and physical balance. And now we look at what we call the virtue for the type, this highest expression of their potential. Think of it as keeping all the gifts for the type and then also uncovering or remembering a piece of truth that has been forgotten along the way. For type 4, we refer to the virtue as equanimity, a state of emotional balance and stability where feelings can be observed but do not overwhelm. The work here is about releasing an attachment to the idea that something is missing and centering feelings as facts. Instead, appreciating what is, the wholeness and realness that exists right now in this present moment. A reconnection to holy origin, a knowing that all comes from one and is one, inseparable and complete, simply by virtue of our being.
So, I think it's important to say here that this is just a place from which to start. No one is a caricature of a type. We do have patterns. We do have a type, but we are also complex individuals who are adaptive and develop strategies, sometimes even beyond our type. And so want to, Ashley, invite you into this conversation and acknowledge from the front end that some of what I've shared may resonate, some may not. That is all A-okay. We really want to move at this point to hear about what your experience is. And so to get us started, I'm curious just what comes to the top of mind when I ask you, what is it like being a 4?
It depends on the day for me.
Yeah.
Today was a 4-day that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Equanimity was not a place I was in today.
Yeah.
But it's something I strive for, and it's something that I find is a strange sensation for me. Yeah. Being someone who's so used to having so many different emotions and feelings coursing through you at any given time, learning to just let it flow through you like water, and to be an observer is something I'm still working on. I think I always will be. Yeah. And so it hasn't become a familiar feeling yet.
Well, and I'm curious, like Ashley, is it fair to say that there's actually, despite the reality that this roller coaster of emotions can be exhausting and actually in the moment not be a place that feels really good, in some other ways, it is actually this place of comfort and identity.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I have begun to notice in myself is this identity that has been built around all of these intense feelings.
Yeah.
And learning to let go of that, to know when it's healthy, and when I need to release myself from that pattern.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, I mean, just as you started today and said, it's been an intense 4-day, how could you contextualize what intense means emotionally as far as your experience today?
Well, a lot of the less glamorous things about the 4 that you were describing were part of my day today. Yeah. A big sense of, I don't typically identify with the term envy, but there is definitely the feeling of incompleteness, or this mindset of what's missing, focusing on what's missing from the situation or to get to the goal. And there was also a big experience of disconnectedness today. And I found myself withdrawing from people around me, from my work, from the situations that I was in. So there was really this kind of shrinking away from everything, this retreat into myself. Yeah. That I think that 4s can be famous for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Ashley, would it be okay if we sit with this for just a minute? I've got a couple more questions about the retreat and the withdrawing. You touched on it briefly, but what sort of experience sets you off to do that retreat?
I think it can be many different types of experiences, but most frequently lately, it's all around my career right now. I think I've been leaning on my 3 wing quite a bit lately for this really big push internally to achieve and to grow in my profession and in my life. And I have been feeling a bit caged in that area. Yeah. The desire, the willingness is here. I'm trying to set myself up for that growth. And there are roadblocks in the way that I haven't been able to get around.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that retreat I've been experiencing lately is when I come up to that roadblock.
Yeah.
And as much as I push to get past it, it's these expectations I'm placing on myself, but also the lack of support I feel like I'm getting around me. Yeah. So again, this incomplete experience, these things that are missing to get me past the hurdle.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, as folks listen through the episodes of the podcast, we're going to hear, directly from the 9 types, really what the tendency is within the type for navigating difficult situations in our lives. And I think what you've shared right now is beautiful. It is, and I don't know why, but in my mind, I think about how the 8 responds as opposed, to how the 4 responds. And it really feels almost night and day. This sense of retreat when up against difficulty, as opposed to, what the 8 might experience or report, which is this really coming out of themselves and forward and into the world. And so, thank you for contextualizing that. And I think it's important to say one is not good and one is not bad. They are just our patterns, and both can get in the way. Can we spend a minute, Ashley, turning this notion of the pursuit around, or the longing around incompleteness? Can we turn that on its head? What beauty can you make of that? How does that tendency actually show up in the world and in your life as a beautiful thing?
I think, and thank you for asking that, because people always associate 4s with negative emotions, and we're so full of positive emotions, and we have such a tendency to see the beauty in things. Mm-hmm. I think for me, it calls me back to enjoy the process and the journey instead of the final destination. And in my line of work and in my own life's journey, the process is what has shaped me. So I try to remind myself that the beautiful part of life is the process and not the actual destination.
Yeah. And so is it fair to say there is beauty I'm thinking about a lotus leaf. It's like there's beauty in the mud. There's beauty in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, the lotus leaf is a great example. And even thinking back to my childhood, my Nana, whom I was so close with, she grew up saying the mantra to me, pain is beauty. So I think I have always had a tendency, even in painful, uncomfortable moments, to somehow synthesize the beauty out of it.
Yeah, and the world needs this work, Ashley. Like, the world needs individuals who are comfortable sitting in uncomfortable places and who, don't you think?
Oh, most definitely. And I think that is a hidden strength of a 4.
Yeah.
There are other types that run as quickly as they can from discomfort, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm willing to sit there, as I know other 4s are, and to absorb it and to spend the time there. I don't think not because we're gluttons for punishment, but because I think deep down we know that there's value in it, and that sitting with something for a while is going to help you transform that moment, yourself, your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, let me contextualize and ask you if this resonates, because I think we use the word retreat. It is, but it's not a retreat as in a running away from something as much, I think, as it is a retreat to the inner life and to sitting with something in a very inward looking way. Does that feel fair to you?
Absolutely. It is. Yeah. It's not a running away from. It's it's a sitting with. And
in
only in a way that I can do internally.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, in some ways, it's honestly more a running toward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Toward self. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you said a hidden strength, and I think you also made a reference to what the world may perceive about the 4, but take that maybe a step further. What do you think folks are misunderstanding most about individuals who lead with type 4? Anything else you would say about that?
I think those who don't lead with the 4 type may never quite fully grasp the depth of emotion that we experience, whether it's negative or positive, and how it can truly wash over you in an instant. I will never forget a couple of years ago during the pandemic, we took a trip out west and we national park hopped. Best trip I've taken in a long time. And I remember the first park we stopped at was the Grand Canyon. And despite the altitude sickness I was having at 8,800 feet up, we got out of the car and walked over to the edge, right where you could start to see down into the canyon. And I instantly teared up. Just from the specter and the beauty of it all, that reminder that I am but a little speck in the greater scheme of things. And it was an instant reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that the incredible thing about Fours is that we allow ourselves to stay in a vulnerable place most of the time, to fully feel the emotions and the feelings of ourselves, and we pick up on them in other people as well.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge crier in movies, but when I'm sitting next to my husband, when I hear him sniffling, boom, I'm crying. I can't not cry.
Yeah. Can you go in your sense memory to that experience that you had at the Grand Canyon and that overwhelm with the natural beauty and the grandeur of it all? And I'm curious if you could share, where do you experience that feeling somatically in your body? Where does that energy, that emotional energy live?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I think for me, it's almost like in the womb. It is so deep in my core.
Yeah, guttural.
And it truly is, and it's almost like I can feel it there, and I feel it spring up, and I just feel it travel up through my throat to my eyes that almost always water and tear, right?
Yeah.
But it starts there for me.
Yeah, yeah. And what about? Is the experience the same in these situations of feeling disconnected? And, you mentioned feeling some resonance around the notion of incompleteness. So maybe can you go back to an experience in your sense memory of feeling that way? And does that come from the same place or different?
I don't think it does.
Oh, yeah?
And it's fresh in my memory because I was feeling it so much earlier today. For me, it's almost more of a head sensation, which is interesting because we're heart center. Yeah. But it's almost a dizziness type of sensation that I get, and this cloudiness in my brain.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Dizziness, and I mean, is it a fair word to use? Lost? Oh,
most certainly.
Yeah, lost.
Yes.
Yeah, and in the head. Yeah.
Yes, it's all for me. It's rooted in feelings, but I think for me the disconnectedness, it's always it manifests in my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's totally fair. And I love that you brought up that it's and we're a heart center type, but I'm feeling this in my gut and I'm feeling this in my head. Look, this is the heart center type is about the source of the emotional energy, or the intellectual energy, rather, the intellectual intelligence. It's not about where necessarily you feel that. And so I think that's totally fair. Thank you for sharing that. Ashley, what was your experience like finding your way to identifying as a type 4? Was that an easy discovery? Was it a challenge? What would you share with us about that?
When I think about finding my way to 4, I always kind of giggle to myself because my initial response to the Enneagram was classic 4. Oh, I can't be categorized. No way I'm going to fit any of these boxes. And I think once I let go of that notion, I actually found my home very quickly. Mm-hmm. A lot of the characteristics resonated with me so quickly. And it was also easy by process of elimination. When I was learning about all of the 9 types at the same time, knowing that like the 8, no, that just doesn't, none of that fits me.
Yeah. So when we think about the type, we've got these wings on both sides of us, wherever we are on the Enneagram. And so for the 4 on our left, we've got the 3 with this, achieving and sense of accomplishment. And then on our right, we've got the type 5, this collector of information and the observer, the watchful observer of all things and of the world. And this sense, this quest for knowledge and information. Where do the wings show up for you in your experience of being a 4? Where are they helpful for you?
I think my 3 wing is definitely a lot bigger than my 5 wing.
Yeah.
The 3 I find aiding me a lot more in my professional life. The 3 wing is a reminder that I am more than my feelings, and that that it's okay to be driven, that it's okay to want success. The 5, I think the 5 comes and goes for me, especially I think I lean on my 5 more when I'm in that withdrawn mode, and in feeling that sense of retreat. It can, I don't think I've ever really consciously thought about it, but now that I'm talking about it, I think I find comfort in hoarding knowledge and collecting data, and that's a safe place for me internally. Yeah. And when I'm not feeling so withdrawn, my 3 wing is what pushes me along and helps me be a bit more extroverted and helps me really envision myself outside of my own mind and body. Right. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. What advice would you offer to someone who has an individual in their life who they believe leads with type 4? And for the sake of the example, let's say that the individual who they believe is a type 4 is really on this pretty extreme emotional roller coaster pretty frequently. What is the best way for someone to be with you and sit with you and support you when you are in that place, Ashley?
For me, just sit and listen. Don't invalidate or make me feel like my feelings are being invalidated. Let me know that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, and perhaps help me find a way out of them if you can. And I know that can be a challenge and it can be different for every person. But if you know the person well, I think there are tips to help 4s get out of our emotional state. If you can discover that about 4 you think who's a 4 in your life. But don't dismiss or poo-poo the feelings that we're feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's probably pretty easy for folks to imagine what they might do that would be dismissive of feelings and emotions, maybe. But this word that you used, invalidating the emotion or the feelings, I'm curious if you would tease that out for us a little bit more. What has someone done to you that causes you for your emotional sense to feel invalidated? What are the ways that happens?
Comparison.
Okay.
Don't come back at me with a comparison of, oh, well, I've had this experience, or you don't have it as bad as so-and-so, or in this way. For me, that's a surefire way to tell me, okay, you don't see anything I'm going through as a real valid life experience.
Right.
Or I've had others, when I've gotten upset, tell me, no need to get hysterical. That's another big one.
Ashley, what about, I'm curious how this lands on you, someone who with, obviously good intention just wants to fix whatever it is by making it seem simpler.
Oh, certainly.
That does not land.
It certainly does not land.
Okay. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't need my concern diminished either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in that moment, it is the biggest concern in the world.
Yeah.
And it will pass. And I know that deep down inside.
Yeah.
But when everything bubbles up like that, you forget. It's hard to call yourself back to that. And diminishing whatever emotion it is, typically this is always with negative emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But diminishing that certainly doesn't help the emotion pass any sooner. If anything, it makes it bubble more for me and turns it into anger. And then it gets extra emotional, and it's just this vicious cycle.
Yeah. I think it's this reminder that this work is really about compassion. And so, if we ground ourselves, if we think we're working with someone or living with someone who is a type 4, keeping in mind that there's this central narrative around authenticity and depth. And so anything that sort of comes at the authenticity or the depth is really probably not the solution.
Agreed.
Yeah. Ashley, I can't believe how fast time goes by in these conversations. I have one last question for you for today. And that is, what is your favorite thing about being a type 4?
I think, again, it goes back to the beauty. Just the beauty that I'm able to perceive, I think I can't say this fairly, but I think it sets the life experience of a 4 a bit apart from everyone else. And that beauty, I'm not talking about just physical beauty or, oh, look at that flower. I'm talking about when I see two people exchange, have an exchange, or, last time I was on the concert stage, we had a guest percussionist with us, and he stepped up on the podium before the concert, and he has a stutter. And he got up there and gave this address to the entire ensemble through his stutter to tell us how much he's enjoyed playing with us and how he can feel the energy among all of the musicians. And I'm sitting there in my seat tearing up right before we're supposed to play a concert.
Yeah.
But it's almost to me like beauty for a 4 is perceived as energy. And that it vibrates at a different frequency within us. And that it can be the smallest thing that we pick up on with it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. What other good pieces of insight or sharing do you have to leave us with here before we end our time, Ashley?
I think if you dig more deeply into the 4 as someone who's always trying to find meaning and find purpose in things, I tend to lean a lot into this idea of my divine power. And that it's a goal and a principle that drives me in life. And for that of the 4, our divine power is becoming a builder of other people. And so we have this incredible ability to know ourselves deeply. But if we can learn to turn that outward and give that same attention and love to everyone else around us, we are a force for change and for development and for leading other people. So I think people learn about the 4, and I think we tend to come off as conceited and really self-centered, but we have this incredible power to give that same love and attention to everyone else around us.
Yeah. I love that. We just got to do the work, right?
It's all in the work.
Yeah. Well, I say thank you, Ashley, for who you are and for the work you're doing and for the ways that you make and add and share your beauty. You've certainly done that with us today in this conversation, so I appreciate that. And I hope I might be able to talk you into coming back in the future season as we start putting types together in shared conversation and looking at intersections and how energy shifts and moves around across types. So maybe you'd be up for that.
That would be lovely. And thank you for all of the work you're doing and sharing the perspective of the 4 and all of the other types. This is good stuff.
Good. Well, we will see you soon. And until then, be well.
Thank you.
See ya.
We hope you are taking away a new learning or insight today, maybe about yourself, someone in your life, or both. If so, time well spent. And if you are ready to explore this work on a more personal level, I invite you to be in touch. Visit us on the web at forwardbound.com. That's FOURWARDBOUND.com. There you can learn more about our coaching and Enneagram education work and schedule yourself for a free of charge discovery call. Finally, we look forward to welcoming you back for another episode of Fourward Bound with the Enneagram very soon. Again, thanks for spending this time with us. Be well.